cold Korean winter, United Nations troops once again hit the road toward Korea's capital city of Seoul. On the way, American infantrymen fight through towns like the rail center of Anyang, south of Seoul. This time, the advance is different from previous Allied attacks. Led by tanks stabbing deep into the Chinese Communist lines, searching out the Reds and the rice paddies, the goal of the United Nations Command this time is not to capture towns, but to track down the enemy and destroy him. If this war of maneuver gains ground, so much the better. And gain ground we do. UN units hurling back Chinese counterattacks reach the blasted bridges along the vital Han River across from Seoul. For the fourth time since the war's start, the city of Seoul comes under attack. An enemy-held radio tower is clearly visible through the artillery bombardment. The offensive is backed up from bases in Japan, where flying boxcars of the Combat Cargo Command take to the air to drop supplies just as though they were coming off a factory assembly line. Supplies from the air are playing an increasingly large part as the battle in Korea becomes a war of maneuver. For as a result of the strategic decision that it is more important to destroy the enemy than to take ground, the battlefront shifts rapidly. And it's easier to supply a changing front from the air than from the ground. Where the enemy can't be destroyed from land, he's hit by sea. The super dreadnought Missouri, which has been off Korea since early in the campaign, leads a night to dawn naval bombardment. The Mighty Mo's huge 16-inch guns find their mark on the east coast of North Korea. Back on the ground, United Nations troops pursue the enemy around the clock and in every kind of weather. The Allies bring their heaviest guns and equipment to bear on the job at hand. In the assault launched right from the bivouac areas, GIs carry on normal duties almost under the mouths of the cannon. To the front to see for himself the progress of the battle comes the United Nations Commander-in-Chief, General MacArthur. He congratulates Allied commanders, including Ralph Monclar, leader of a French battalion, who demoted himself from full general to lieutenant colonel to fight in Korea. Watching the progress of the war of maneuver, General MacArthur, with Lieutenant General Ridgway, sees the United Nations achieve its best successes since Red China intervened in Korea. Premier René Pleven, who flew to New York, arrives in Washington by train, where with Ambassador Henri Bonnet, he is greeted by President Truman and U.S. cabinet members. After 4 days of conferences on mutual problems in the Far East and Europe, American and French officials announce complete agreement, and Pleven's mission is a sweeping success. In Tokyo, a 200-man honor guard comes to attention for an important occasion, General MacArthur's 71st birthday. Mrs. MacArthur watches as her husband, in excellent health, despite the rigors of the occupation and the immense task of commanding UN forces in Korea, inspects his elite guard. Celebrating the day as usual by working, MacArthur declares that America can never turn back in the fight against communism. Rio de Janeiro, Getulio Vargas, Brazil's chief of state from 1930 to 1945, is hailed by his enthusiastic followers who have this time elected him president in an overwhelming victory at the free polls. Ambassador Johnson with Nelson Rockefeller are among dignitaries of 52 nations who see President Vargas sign the oath of office. Outgoing President General Dutra gives his successor the traditional sash of office as Brazil welcomes Vargas back to his old job.
Today, in an hour of national need, the American Red Cross is responding to the call. On the field of battle in Korea, whole blood and plasma collected by the Red Cross are saving countless lives. In hundreds of blood centers like this one, the Red Cross collects blood for emergency use in battle or in a disaster at home. Today, most of it goes to Korea, rushed by plane to the armed forces. At home, the Red Cross has another important job, helping the staff of veterans' hospitals carry out the tremendous work of rebuilding the strength and spirit of the wounded. The Red Cross recreational and welfare programs now serve over 110,000 war veterans. When disaster strikes in any U.S. community, the Red Cross is organized to provide immediate aid to the victims. 11,000 mobile first aid units can be rushed anywhere to meet domestic emergencies. 250,000 people receive such Red Cross help each year. When a flood leaves thousands homeless, trained volunteers of the Red Cross move in. Months after such disasters are no longer news, the Red Cross may still be on hand to help in the rehabilitation of individuals and families. With the threat of an atomic or other attack, the Red Cross takes over a huge responsibility in civil defense. The government has asked the Red Cross to train 20 million people to meet any peril to come. In America's cities, Red Cross classes in every kind of disaster work are training factory, professional, and business workers to care for themselves and others in an emergency. And in small towns and rural areas, millions more are being trained. In the nation's hospitals, the Red Cross is training 100,000 nurses' aides. 750,000 other women are being trained in home nursing. For this young nurse's aide, as for all Americans, the completion of Red Cross training is a moment of pride. United in mercy through the Red Cross, we face a brighter future no matter what may come. What's this, a flying Jeep? No, it's a submarine one. At Marineland, Florida, the Army's jack of all trades goes underwater, and news magazine cameras go along with it. The Jeep's motor breathes through a snorkel snorter extension, whose ingenious valve system keeps water out, but lets air in and releases the exhaust. These tests have a practical purpose. All new Army Jeeps will have waterproof engines and ignition systems to run through water up to their windshields. Trucks, too, go underwater. At nearby Rainbow Springs, Florida, the new Army Ordnance truck, the Rio Eager Beaver, takes to water like a duck. The driver breathes with an underwater lung, and the truck's motor, like the Jeep's, uses the same snorkel snorter arrangement to keep going underwater. The 2.5-ton truck, officially called the M34, has been designed for heavy-duty work, including submersion. It can stay underwater for as long as 4 hours with the motor running. It'll be especially useful in amphibious landings and river crossings, as in Korea. Oops, where'd all that water come from? 40 years of naval aviation history are recalled at Lindbergh Field, San Diego. This 1912 Curtiss-type pusher biplane was built by old-time pilot Will D. Parker, who prepares to hazard life and limb. Pilot Parker, like old-time Navy flyers, gets his report on wind conditions. Contact. And he's off. Parker dazzles attending Navy observers by hitting the remarkable speed of 70 miles per hour. Why, someday the Navy may fly the oceans. Some railroads go from coast to coast, but this one, although it's in perfect operating order, never gets away from home. It's the Union Connecting Railroad, probably the largest zero-gauge model railroad in the world. The UCRR is owned and operated by the New York Society of Model Engineers. The society includes doctors, lawyers, advertising men, almost everybody except railroad men. They've been working on this system for 25 years, and they don't call it finished yet. It takes 100 man-hours of work for each foot of track. The UCRR, on a scale of 1/4 of an inch to a foot, duplicates actual railroad operations, even to round tables and hand cars. Part of our history and of our daily lives, railroading has a powerful lure for most Americans.
President Truman comes to Philadelphia to dedicate the Chapel of the Four Chaplains inside Philadelphia's Baptist Temple, a memorial to 4 heroic men of God, 2 Protestant ministers, a Catholic priest, and a Jewish rabbi. President Truman unveils the mural depicting their self-sacrifice. 8 years ago, when the troop ship Dorchester was torpedoed off Greenland, all 4 chaplains gave their life belts to others and went down with the ship. 10,000 Americans contributed to the chapel. A revolving base has 3 altars. This, for Protestant services, commemorates chaplains George L. Fox and Clark B. Poling. This, for Catholic services, commemorates Father John P. Washington. And this, for Jewish services, commemorates Rabbi Alexander D. Good. The Chapel of the Four Chaplains is truly a sanctuary for brotherhood.
Square Garden, America's best milers compete in the Baxter Mile of the New York Athletic Club games. The crowd's eyes are on 23-year-old Don Gehrman of Wisconsin. Gehrman, here moving up to first place, has won 37 straight victories over his old rival FBI agent Fred Wilt and all other opponents in this grueling distance. With 4 laps to go, the race falls into the familiar but thrilling pattern of Gehrman first, Wilt second. Now Wilt passes Gehrman, and Don will really have to step to get out in front again. Gehrman is famed for his last-second winning kick that has made him one of the world's great runners. But can he catch Wilt this time? It's neck and neck, stride for stride, down the last 20 yards to the tape. Then Gehrman edges ahead, and it's champion Don Gehrman by the margin of a single stride, again the winner. Don Gehrman sets America's pace in the mile. In the same meet, Yale man Jim Fuchs, already Olympic champion, sets a new world record in his specialty, the shot put. Jim heaves the 16-pound shot farther than it has ever been heaved indoors before. The judges set the mark at 58 feet, 3½ inches. Jim Fuchs, greatest shot putter in track and field history. The Reverend Robert Richards, an ordained minister of Laverne, California, has long aspired to be the second human being to pole vault past the magic height of 15 feet. Here, a year ago, he thought he had made it, but by error, the bar was ½ an inch short. Now, in this year's Millrose Games, Richards aims at 15 feet once again. He's over. The bar quivers, but stays put. Richards, successful after 2 years of tireless trying, bounces into the air in triumph. The 24-year-old Richards, who alternates between the pulpit and the pole vault, follows all-time record holder Cornelius Warmerdam in topping the 15-foot mark. Final measurement pegs his leap at 15 feet 1 inch. The Reverend Robert Richards joins the roster of America's track champions.
With a great parade in Sydney, the Commonwealth of Australia marks an anniversary. 50 years of dramatic progress since a half-dozen separate colonies joined together in 1901 to form a new nation. Captain Cook, commemorated in this float, claimed this continent for Britain in 1770. Australia has never stopped growing at home or in its worldwide influence on the side of freedom. Australia, with a population today of 8 million, is nearly 3 million square miles in area, just slightly smaller than the continental United States. Australia's first settlers landing during the American Revolution found their new land full of surprises, like the cuddly koala bear, now protected by the government. And the destructive flying fox. Australia's native animals had developed uniquely in the isolation of their continent. Almost a symbol of Australia is the kangaroo. As big as a man, it runs in leaps of up to 20 feet at 40 miles per hour. The Australian countryside, in many places rich and fertile, has today become one of the world's great grazing grounds. Its huge herds of cattle make Australia a leading world producer of meat and dairy products. Enormous flocks of sheep, 120 million strong, whose ancestors were imported from France, Germany, and the United States, furnish 1/4 of all the wool in the world, some $500 million worth every year. Sydney, Australia's largest city, a modern metropolis of 1.5 million, is the site of what Australians call the greatest fair on earth. And it might be, with its 1.25 million visitors, its vast exhibits, its enthusiastic junior farmers like America's 4-H groups, and its magnificently bred animals of every kind. When democracy was threatened in 2 world wars, Australia responded without hesitation. Australians flocked to the colors from all over their continent in 1939 to join Britain and France against Nazi Germany. They distinguished themselves immeasurably in Africa, in Europe, and in the Pacific. After Japan attacked Pearl Harbor, seized the Philippines and Singapore, Australia became a vast base for American troops as the 2 nations joined forces to defeat the common enemy. General Douglas MacArthur set up headquarters on Australian soil in March 1942. Today, Australian troops share in the Allied occupation of Japan. When the war in Korea began, Australia's Prime Minister Menzies flew to Washington to pledge aid to the UN and the US. Aussie air squadrons went into action in Korea only a few days after America's and were followed by naval and ground units. A great Australian air hero, Wing Commander Spence, was decorated by America's General Stratemeyer. Later, he was killed in action in Korea. Australia's capital is the new and beautiful city of Canberra. Like Washington, D.C., it's a federal territory. The city was designed by an American, Walter Burley Griffin. Australia's parliament, patterned after Britain's and America's, is composed of senators and representatives elected by popular vote. Members of opposing parties sit on opposite sides of the chamber. Education in Australia is free and compulsory, with private and religious schools supplementing public institutions, as in our own country. These are the children of a democracy. Their fathers are clerks, storekeepers, government workers, farmers, businessmen of Australia. They're a lot like us. Like American youth, they love sports. Cricket, rugby, and Australia's own brand of football are their favorites. Melbourne is Australia's second city, capital of the state of Victoria, and until 1927, capital of the entire Commonwealth. Younger than most American cities, it has an old world air. The Shrine of Remembrance marks Australia's reverence for her men who have died for democracy. Melbourne University has a normal enrollment of 4,000. Its student body has doubled since World War II under a veterans' law, much like our American GI Bill of Rights. Melbourne's department stores and shops displaying native and American products are reminiscent also of Australia's sentimental and material ties to England. Only 50 years ago, these self-reliant people became a nation and a stalwart friend and ally to other democracies. 8,000 miles away in the Pacific is America's good neighbor, a great free country, Australia.